Hello again, YouTube. I am live streaming now for the second time in one evening, which seems crazy, but I guess there's no rule against it. After I finished the last live stream, I walked away from the piano for a bit and realized I had a lot of musical ideas that I had left at the piano that I wanted to come back and explore. And I thought, well, might as well live stream some of that process too. If my live streams about composing are interesting to anyone, well, this will be a very composing-y live stream. In fact, this might be the first time that I'm really composing like from scratch on a live stream and not just doing revisions or something like that. Which I should say something about because composing is a very private process. There's a quote, I read it in some book about, about writing. I wish I could remember who it's attributed to, but it's kind of a famous quote. It's something like, this was by a famous writer, I think, who said this. It's like, she said, when I was 8, I asked my mom if I could close my door. And she said, yes, but why? And I said, because I want to read. And when I was 9, I asked my mom if I could lock my door, and she said, yes, but why? And I said, because I want to write. Think about that for a second. So what I take from that quote, and this has been my experience for as long as I've been a creative person, which is basically my whole life, that yes, creativity, the act of creating, requires intense privacy for me. Again, I don't state anything like that as a blanket statement for all creators. I know everyone has their own way of doing things. But I do know that for me, the act of composing, for example, or writing prose, writing poetry, is an extremely private act. Like something that one has to do with, well, I guess like total privacy. I don't know how else to put it. You know, it's like you need to. I can't possibly have anyone see me writing or see me composing or hear me composing or whatever. That might sound odd, but I'm sure composers and writers know what I mean by this. So it feels very odd for me to do a live stream where I'm composing for all the world to see. But, oh well. I hope I'm not violating my own creative process in some way by doing this. But I thought this could be interesting, partly because it's a little bit academic. It's sort of an exercise, but not exactly. I'm starting a fugue. And I guess here comes the preamble about about this piece that is going into. This piece is a huge kind of monster in my life. This is a set that has borne various titles throughout the years. I have to remember what page I was on. 85. I've given this set many titles throughout the years. Right now, I'm calling it the Book of Undiscovered Leaves. Previously, I had been calling it Opus Anachronicon. And at various times I've thought I should just call it 24 Preludes and Fugues for Piano. And since I've never finished this, much less approached a publisher about it or anything, or a performer, it's all just hypothetical. Ultimately it's 24 Preludes and Fugues for Piano is what it really is, and what I conceived it as, and what, is going to happen. The other descriptive titles are interesting in other ways, I guess. Like, there's a reason I didn't pick this title, Book of Undiscovered Leaves, like randomly. And here in this front matter, I have composed from 2019 to 2023, which when I wrote this note, that was an optimistic forecast of when I would be finished with these pieces. I thought for sure I will have them finished in the year 2023, which has not proved to be the case, as it is currently the year 2025, and I very much have not completed this set of pieces. So, yeah. Oh well, some pieces are like that in a composer's life. So, yeah, I won't go into all the tortuous nooks and crannies of how the set has developed and undeveloped and redeveloped throughout my compositional life since about 2019. Though the germ of this work goes back a lot further than 2019. Really, I started writing this piece conceptually in my mind in like 2011, 2012. I have for a long time attempted to write a set of 24 preludes, and I actually have older sets of piano pieces that are 24 preludes that I've also never had published or performed. I could dig them out and I'll show them on another live stream. You don't have to take my word for it. I'll show them at some point. So I have a set of 24 preludes for piano that I wrote in the years 2000. Some of them I think started in 2015. I don't remember exactly when I started it, 2015 or 16, and I worked on them intermittently for several years around that time. And then I started this set, which basically was taking off from the same idea of 24 preludes, but adding fugues. So I have another complete set of 24 preludes that I wrote like a little while before I started this. There's actually a lot more than 24 pieces in that set. I had to pick and choose because I just kept writing piano pieces and I couldn't decide which was going to be the set of 24. I ultimately wrote probably closer to 50 pieces, and the miscellaneous like two dozen that are hanging around, I just have in various folders of like miscellaneous pieces that anyways, my point is I've written many piano pieces that have never seen the light of day, and this is one of them. But this one is still, unlike the others, this one is still very like real to me. Like this one still feels like a project that I'm going to complete and see through to completion. Like the older set of 24 preludes for piano that I kind of finished working on in like 2018, that set I don't think I'm ever going to try to do anything with. I don't think I'm going to try to get them performed or published or anything. I mean, maybe I'll try to make some recordings of them for YouTube, just so I can say that they're out there, because I certainly spent like years of my life working on those pieces. So it would be a shame for them not to have like any like exposure. So I figure I owe it to myself at least to like record them for YouTube or something, with the score and stuff so people can see them. But I guess I don't really think that those pieces represent me so well as a composer anymore, blah, blah, blah. All right, so this set, on the other hand, I still really believe in, and it's still real to me. I'm still working on it. So I more than finished all of the preludes. Same as the previous set of preludes, I ended up writing a lot more preludes than I needed and had to kind of like shuffle around preludes and try to figure out, wait, what's the right order of all of these pieces so that it makes 24, blah, blah, blah. Fugues, I wrote 12 fugues and a bunch of sketches for others. So I have 12 complete fugues as of the time of this recording. I have exactly 12 start to finish complete fugues, and then sketches for probably another half dozen, and then another half dozen that I didn't get, that haven't sketched or anything. All right, so that brings us to the present day, the current moment. This fugue would go with prelude number 20 to make prelude and fugue number 20. Also, I started giving the pieces evocative subtitles. I don't know if I really like this. From Which You Cannot Wake. It's a little... it's almost a little cringy. I don't know. I don't know if all the subtitles work. Some of them are really good. This one maybe not so much. But so the prelude, gosh, I don't remember writing this prelude. I wrote this years ago. I barely remember it. I should play it. I'll play the prelude, and then I'll talk about the fugue subject and where this just kind of originated in my head this evening. So let me play the prelude first. I'll stop yapping here for a second. I'll mute my microphone so you just hear the piano. Make sure I do it. Right, so there's the prelude. I like it. Boy, I wrote some of these pieces a long time ago, years ago. Playing it brings me back to that time in my life and what I was thinking about when I wrote this. It's kind of an odd feeling. Things are very different now in my life from the time when I wrote this piece. Maybe some things for the better, maybe some things not so much for the better. So it's interesting. This is one reason why everyone should be an artist in some medium. Everyone can do something. Everyone has a talent. Everyone has a creative talent, an artistic talent. Every human being on the planet. They just have to find their medium and their power, their inner creative power. You know, some people compose music, some people paint, some people write, some people work with animals, some people teach, you know, some people plant gardens, some people build furniture, build houses. Some people cook, right? I mean, everyone has a way of expressing themselves and beauty in some medium. And I think one reason why everyone should do that, whatever it is for them, is that the thing that you create helps you to understand yourself better, and perhaps, we can hope, understand someone else better also, other people. That your creation is a vehicle or vessel for your own discovery of like your own past, your own sort of humanity and love for others. And anyways, like when you create something, you become more attuned to those things, I guess. And sometimes when I play my own music, like pieces that I wrote years ago, sometimes I don't know, I guess it can make me very emotional, because I suddenly remember things about that time that I maybe didn't remember up until that moment, you know, of playing the piece. You know, I play a piece that I wrote years ago. I haven't played it for years. I don't really remember much about the piece. I just wrote it, you know, in this case, probably wrote this piece, I'm guessing in 2020, I would guess, I think. So, and I don't really remember looking at it much since then. So I just played a piece that I haven't seen, that I wrote, you know, 5 years ago. And, you know, a lot has happened in my life in the last 5 years. And it's just like, whoa, this is like a picture, you know, when you take an actual picture, a photograph, you know, it's like seeing a photograph of something from 5 years ago that you haven't seen since you took it, right? I mean, imagine that feeling if you could come across a photograph that you randomly snapped one day and that you haven't seen since that day, and then seeing that photograph, what would that be like? This is like that in music. So, you know, maybe you could say it's a photograph of my heart or something like that, but you get the idea. Right. So it feels a little funny to come back to the piece now with a new a new perspective. Um, anything I write now anything I compose to follow this piece now will be coming from a different perspective. I can try to continue the piece. I can try to imagine that I'm in 2020 again, and like, what fugue would I write back then? Like, how would I have, you know, written a fugue for this piece if I hadn't just stopped at the prelude when I wrote this prelude in 2020? What would I have written for the fugue? I wish I had just written the darn fugue at the same time as the prelude. Why did I let myself write preludes without the fugues? This is so. Oh, maybe this project is doomed, right? Can I really write the fugue 5 years later and have it really connect with the prelude? I mean, that's a real question, folks. That's not hypothetical. These are the questions that literally that keep me up at night. This set keeps me up at night, and it's questions like this that do it. Will I ever be able to finish it? Because even if I do write fugues for all of the preludes that don't have fugues, will they really connect with the preludes? I don't know. You can torture yourself with stuff like that, but sometimes it's better to just freaking write. Yeah, sometimes you have to know when to throw in the towel on a piece and say, this just is never going to happen. But then again, other people might say, no, you never do that on a piece, right? You see it through, right? That's what the discipline is about and stuff like that. I don't know. I think there's varying opinions. I mean, I've already brought up the quote in a previous live stream, a work of art is never really finished, only abandoned. And this quote has been attributed to many people. But, the sentiment is sometimes quite apt, right? When you're looking at your own pieces and you're like, I just don't know. I just don't know if I can go on with this anymore. Well, here I am with the piece anyways, right? Like, we're not doing that today. Here we are with the piece again. So I guess that answers the question, right? So this fugue, the subject came to me in a flash, actually way from the piano. And that's how I know it's good. Anything that comes to me in a flash away from the piano, like I hear the music clearly in my head, and I hear it so clearly that I can actually see the notation in my mind, like how I will write it down and everything. And that's how this subject came to me, is like it came all together. So that's almost always like, I don't want to say gold, but that might sound a little arrogant, but like it feels like that's a gift, right? Like you don't have to question it. You just take it, you receive it, you put it down, and off you go. I've always tried to respect those things and not F with them. Like if you get something like that, don't F with it too much. Don't try to be clever and start, ooh, I can do all these other things. No. Just put it down on the pages. You got it, from wherever. Okay, received, and on paper. Great. Now play around with all of the possibilities. You've got the solid object. You're going to keep that, and now you can do whatever you want. So the solid object here is this fugue subject. And I also heard the answer, by the way, that I knew the answer wanted to be in the key, in the tonic, and ascend a fifth. So like we would call a tonal answer in fugue land. So like a tonal answer, but outlining now the full span of the octave. That's how I hear it. So it's ba. So is the subject, and then answer. So you hear kind of like that. So I got that. That's what I got. Everything else is up to me. The rest is, the work. I'm just going to do some stuff with it. This came from the Bach. So in my live stream I just streamed like an hour ago, I was working with a Bach chorale. And so just to reference that, do I still have it up anywhere? Hold on. Let me see. I hope it's... No, you just saw my Reddit page. Shoot. Hold on. Oh, well. I'm not going to show the Bach chorale. No, I should show the Bach chorale. Hold on. I got to do this in OBS Studio. Where was I? Drive. I want to show this Bach chorale one more time from the previous live stream, so that if there's a connection to the fugue subject, which I'm guessing there must be, maybe it will appear as we look at it together here on the live stream. So how should I do this? Okay, bring back the screen sharing. It's a scary thing about live streaming and sharing your screen. I mean, not that, I have that really anything to be afraid of, but it's like, just, you don't want to be like logged into your bank account or whatever and bring up your web page that has your bank account on it or something. I don't know how other live streamers do this. I guess it's like you have to, I don't know, get your desktop all set up properly for this. Anyways, here's the Bach chorale that I was playing and doing like a improvised fantasia on in the previous live stream. So the clear connection, of course, is that it's in D minor. moves around a lot, as Bach chorales do. Harmonically, it goes to all kinds of places. But starts in D minor, and then it has a Picardy third major chord ending, which is just so glorious, so it ends in D major. So my fugue subject is in D minor, and the prelude is also in D minor. That is one thing about these pieces. They are basically tonal. They are basically in keys. That's part of the point of this project to me. It's 24 preludes and fugues in the major and minor keys, which I know is pretty archaic nowadays. I know that that's, depending on who you ask, a lot of composers actually look down on that and consider it to be kind of silly. I get that. It varies from composer to composer. I happen to be one of those composers that believes that you can still name a piece as being in a key. I know. I get it. It's super like silly nowadays, right? Like, you can't do that unless it's ironic or making some kind of wink wink thing, like yeah, really, like, I'm gonna call my piece such and such in B flat. Like a good example of that is like in C. The Terry Riley, that's Terry Riley, right? Terry Riley in C. It's like, it's not really like in C. Like, well, it actually kind of is. Fascinating piece. Is it really in C? You could have a debate about that. Like, wait, is in C supposed to be like an ironic kind of title, or is it literally? Well, I mean, the whole piece is like in a big C. If you're not familiar with that piece, just go listen to NC. It's literally IN, the letter C. It's called NC. Is it really in a key? Fun question. Anyways, these pieces are, kind of unironically, so to speak, like sincerely in these keys. I don't really label them as such, so I don't say Prelude and Fugue number 20 in D minor, which I'm tempted to. At various drafts, I think I was doing that and saying that like in the title of the piece, like Prelude and Fugue number 20 in D minor was like the title of the piece. Now I'm just sticking with a number. The pianist will clearly see, musically, that it's in a key and that the pieces traverse the 24 basically major and minor keys through the cycle. I put that in my, air quotes because, it's a very post-tonal interpretation of major and minor keys, right? They're basically freely atonal pieces that more or less move around within these keys and start and end in these keys. It's kind of like the Berg Sonata. So if you're not familiar with the Berg Sonata, it's a landmark piece, and it's a very important piece for me as a composer. I don't know how other composers feel about it, but that piece sort of defines my kind of approach to harmony, which is that a piece can be understood as having a basic tonal center across the entire overarching piece, and yet be capable of any procedure in the middle of the piece, any procedure involving pitch. So a piece can still basically be overarchingly tonal, but anything goes within the piece, as long as it's rhetorically and narratively effective. So that's not to say like you start a piece in a key and then go off and do a bunch of nonsense and then come back to the original key and say, haha. It's like, no, those things are all part of the organic story of the piece. So, you can have a piece that uses serialism and, 12-tone techniques at one section, and then in another section uses, pure, totally triadic harmony in another section. And then you could blend those sections, and you could have half of the ensemble playing triadic harmony and the other half of the ensemble playing serial music, right? And everything in between. I mean, you look at Rite of Spring is another good example. Rite of Spring doesn't exactly have the same tonal orientation, but I mean, in terms of anything being possible within the piece, right? In Rite of Spring, you have you have every type of tonality basically, or non-tonality, represented. I don't know if there's real serialism in Rite of Spring. I'm sure someone's found it. Aha, look, Stravinsky was doing serialism as early as the Rite of Spring. Maybe, I don't know. But like, besides that, I mean, like, he's got traditional triadic harmony, but then that's combined with bitonality and polytonality and pentatonicism and octatonicism, and all these things are like freely commingling. So I guess that's kind of my like paradigm for how tonality can work, more or less. There's probably other things that can come. I mean, minimalism can interact with these things in really interesting ways. Minimalism has its own kind of approach to harmony. So then there's minimalism too, where, you know, any harmony that you're using, while you tend to respect the primacy of that harmony for a long time, that's part of how minimalism works. So if you're using like pandiatonicism in a minimalist piece, it's probably going to be pandiatonic for like a lot of the piece, if not the entire piece, right? But that's very debatable. I mean, there are minimalist composers who use like a ton of different harmonic practices within one piece and still have it be like still technically a minimalist piece. This is all like, it's all extremely fluid. My point is just to say that my understanding of how harmony works for my practice as a composer is I generally do think tonally as far as the overarching scale of the piece. Like from beginning to end, it will either be in one tonality overall, or it will move from one tonality to another. But that movement will be clear and like perceptible across the span of the piece. So within that like kind of bookends of basic tonality and sort of an overarching tonality, then there's kind of like free play of anything goes like within the middle of the piece, as long as I like it, or as long as it works, you know, as long as it is serving the piece in some way. Okay, so this piece is again with big quotes in D minor, this prelude, which I don't know if I should put huge quotes because, you know, it does start in, well, it doesn't start super clearly in D minor. I mean, this is a very extended D minor, kind of. It's like a D minor and A major chord shoved together. So it's like the tonic and the dominant happening at the same time, basically. It's like you've got a D minor first inversion chord, and you've also got an A major first inversion chord, and I just smushed them together. Right, and then arpeggiated them. And that's kind of how the piece works. It's not really strictly bitonal, but there's maybe a slight bitonal inflection, or I don't know, something like that. Kind of pandiatonic too, but with chromaticism. Whatever. I'm not huge on labels. I don't like to label things too much. So that's the piece. Here's the fugue. Here's the subject, I should say. And the answer. So we get back to that terrifying question of, oh no, does this have anything to do with the prelude? Like, is this really going to work? Actually, I haven't tried this yet. Here's the end of the prelude. Let's say you hold the pedal into the fugue. got that. Did I get that in Logic too? Yay, I got it in Logic too. Thank God. Whew, it's rare that I play an improvisation that I'm happy with that I also managed to record. Very rare. All too rare. Most of the great, well, most of the good improvisations that I play alone with no one around to hear it and nothing recording. This has always haunted me for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been playing piano. I've always played the improvisations that I'm most excited about and happiest about when no one hears it and I don't manage to record it in any way. And if you're hearing that and thinking, well, you just have to, remember it and then write it down or, like play it again. It's like, oh, if only it were that simple. you know, sometimes you get the moment and that's it. After you finish playing, you're like, oh, I don't even remember really what I played. It just all kind of flowed out. I've had many improvisations that way. That's one of the. I mean, I was gonna say it's one of the horrible things, but it's really not so horrible because when you improvise something that you're like, oh my god, that was so great, or I'm so happy with what I just played, and I wish I could write it down. I wish I had recorded it. Trust me, I've had that so many times, and you feel so like gutted almost that you think you're never gonna be able to recapture that that energy and that music that you just created. I find that those improvisations have a way of actually they do come back and they kind of come to you again, not in exactly the same form. Like of course, like you're gonna play different notes and stuff, but over time, it's like you'll kind of you'll kind of start to recognize the ideas as they come to you because you'll have kind of the same ideas in improvisation um, that they kind of keep recurring, and over time you sort of learn to identify or recognize them um, like more precisely in a way that you can actually notate them. I really think that a lot of my music that I compose is really just a refined improvisation that I've played many times. That's how it feels a lot of the time. Like, it's very rare that I sit down and a piece just sort of comes out of nowhere in the sense that I really don't know, like I can't play it or anything. I have written pieces like that where I've used procedures to generate the piece, right? And then, like, I go to play the piece, I'm like, ugh, I don't know if this sounds good. It certainly doesn't feel good to play it. But a lot of the pieces I write, like this prelude, for example, that I wrote years ago, like it feels very comfortable to me because I've played this kind of thing many, many, many times. By this kind of thing, I mean, the left and right hand in a different rhythmic pattern, 10 against 6. And they just kind of keep moving to different like chord shapes and stuff. I mean, I could do that right now. Like, I could just pick a new chord basically to start with, and I could play this whole piece again as an improvisation. Heck, I'm gonna do it. Why the hell not? Cool. Well, that was another version of the D minor prelude that I just improvised. I kind of liked it. I got another improvisation. Wow, two in one night. Actually, three in one night because I really like the Bach thing too. So some nights you just have a good night for improvising. You just feel like you're in the pocket. I guess is kind of a jazz thing. It's more about rhythm. I guess he's really in the pocket. He's really swinging. Um, but like I don't know. That's how it feels. You have on nights and off nights, and I'm not quite sure what to call it for composing. I'm not sure what's the composing equivalent of a phrase like in the pocket, in the zone. Ugh. You got your groove? No. Well, kids nowadays are saying locked in. So I guess you're really locked in. Whatever it is. Okay, so I'm enjoying my not composing my improvisation, but I'm not composing. Let's compose the fugue. This live stream is called Starting a Fugue, and I've done literally everything but start the fugue. I got the subject. Let's well, I improvised the fugue a little bit. I did improvise a fugue, but I'm not going to go back and try to transcribe it right now. I could do that. Um, but no, I'd rather just write a little bit. This is going to be I almost feel like I have a huge resistance to actually composing on a live stream, so I keep finding ways to like not do it. But I don't know. We'll try it. This is going to be an experiment. Try composing on live stream. Here we go. Yeah, it's not going to work. I think I can improvise on live stream, but composing on live stream just I don't know feels weird. I think I need to be in my really like locked in or kind of private place to do the composing. But if you were watching this live stream, you heard me improvise what could be the fugue. So I'll say a word about transcribing one's improvisations as like an act of composing. Um, it's not quite composing to improvise something and then transcribe it. It's not quite composing. Your your improvisations, when transcribed, can certainly be the bones of composition, and in fact they can be a lot of the meat too. Like it's conceivable that you can play an improvisation that if you write it down exactly note for note, it forms a pretty darn good composition right there in its own right. And composers have done this. The first example that comes to mind I think is John Corigliano has some pieces called Wing in it that I I want to say though I think he says that those are transcribed improvisations. I don't think that's supposed to be secret. I think it says that somewhere in the notes or something. I'm almost certain his set Winging It. It says somewhere in like the score. If you get the score, it's a set of piano pieces, but I think they're improvisations that he played, and they're really good pieces, by the way. Um, so yeah, composers have done it, um, but I believe that okay, at least for me, like really composing in the fullest sense of the word always involves really deliberate, calculated, musical, creative decisions that involves a lot of like searching and sort of trying things out and rejecting things and drafting, sketching, discarding, revising and so on. That's how composing works to me. So if I transcribe something that like when I played it was an improvisation through and through, it was literally just like a start to finish improvisation. I'm not like composing, I'm just playing. Like I can transcribe that and be like, wow, this is pretty good, but I always have to, work on it like as a composition then. Usually quite substantially. And I would imagine it's that way for a lot of composers too. So I'll go back and listen to that improvisation where I played the fugue like as an improvisation. I'll go back and listen to it, and I don't know, maybe I'll start there with composing this fugue. That's probably enough for now. there was one other thing I wanted to bring up in relation to the previous live stream that I felt like I should speak more to, but it'll probably come out organically in future live streams, and that's about faith, religion, my faith, and how that relates to my work. So I got into that a bit in the previous live stream, and I guess I almost regretted not putting a disclaimer before I started getting into that particular topic might not be to everyone's liking. Um, and I almost felt like I should, in retrospect, I thought maybe I should have had the presence of mind to say, I'm going to start talking about faith things now and my personal faith. And like, if this is a topic that you just don't like, or you don't like to hear people talk about, then you're duly warned. I guess it's coming up. So maybe this constitutes my disclaimer for all future videos. Just because I know that, I guess maybe the topic makes some people uncomfortable. And also, the last thing in the world that I would want to be is someone who's pushy about their faith. Um, I, I don't know. I just don't want to do that. um, and I know too many people who have had bad experiences, I guess, with other people about that. Um, that I wouldn't want to become like one of those people. uh, that is like pushy or insistent about their faith to other people. And for what it's worth, I guess this isn't like an apology, but it is a statement of sort of awareness, I guess, and sensitivity on my part, that like I've been pretty lucky, I guess, or blessed that I haven't had that experience in my life. Like I have been extremely fortunate with the people that I've known, as far as faith is concerned, that they've all been incredibly kind and gracious and patient and forgiving and humble people. That's been my experience almost universally up until very recently in my life. Actually, just very recently, I started having some experiences with people of faith that were quite quite upsetting and quite disturbing to me due to how these people acted as representatives of their faith. But I didn't experience that until very recently. Like through most of my childhood and upbringing and young adulthood, I never had anyone shoving their religion in my face and trying to get me to convert or anything like that. So I was spared those like experiences that I've heard about from other people that I understand and fully acknowledge can be um, incredibly damaging and like just I guess unpleasant. Um, and like I said, I don't ever want to be one of those people um, doing that. But that does inevitably come into conflict with the need to be honest and sincere about one's faith. No, I should say that these things come into conflict. It's just that there can be an appearance of conflict about it, I suppose, just in the sense that it's not like I'm going to keep my faith a secret, because it's integral to who I am and to what I believe, and really everything I do as an artist, as a composer, um, is innately connected to that. It didn't used to be, and I should add also that I guess I'm gonna okay. So here's that like disclaimer again. Like I'm gonna get into talking about like my faith journey here just a little bit, but since it's come up, I guess I should speak to it a little bit because it's gonna keep coming up. The topic of faith, I mean. So, like, I was not raised particularly religiously. Like, my family, I guess, is nominally Christian, and we were baptized. Like me and my siblings, we were baptized as babies and all that. But without getting into the family history stuff, it's just that let me say, just speaking from my own individual personal experience, for a while I considered myself atheist. A while, like when I was a young, like teenager, like probably high school, like I definitely was like atheist, or I said I was in high school, and I was sort of anti-religion and anti-Christian and all that. And then, and I'm leaving out a lot here because there were people in my life then who, I talked to religion about and I would get into arguments with and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff there. I'm not going to get into all the details, but um, when I was an undergraduate student, I was kind of spiritually curious, I suppose, and I was like trying out things a little bit. Like I went to like a Unitarian Universalist church for like once. I was like, this will be worth trying because, it's just spirituality. Like, that's what I want. It's like spirituality. I don't really want to commit to one thing, but I do want to be spiritual, whatever that means. I guess you might say that the first conviction that moved me away from like really hardline atheism was simply the conviction that the religious or spiritual experience is innate to people, to humanity. At the very least, to myself, I realized that no matter how much I railed against it, I did have a yearning for some kind of spiritual like experience, and I just couldn't deny that. It was annoying to me as an atheist, and I kind of like briefly subscribed to the idea, put forward by some of the new atheists, like I think Richard Dawkins says this, that yes, humans have this sort of innate spiritual instinct, but it's like an error. It's like an error of the human like condition. It's like a remnant. I don't know if I'm misrepresenting the idea, but it's like it's a remnant of our evolution, and it's just one of those vestigial things. I think Richard Dawkins even compares it to like the spleen or like one of those like unnecessary organs. It's like faith, the desire for spirituality is sort of some unnecessary like part of the brain that just hasn't gotten evolved away yet or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to comment on that idea other than to say that I don't believe that the human yearning for spiritual experience is an error. I believe it is. I believe it is a truth. I believe it's a universal truth of human experience, and I think it's an error to suppress it. And anyways, I won't go too much more into the into the weeds of my faith journey, other than to say that it's been a slow one. I remember, like I said, being an atheist when I was a teenager, so 20 years ago, I guess. And it has taken that 20 years to get to where I am now. So, that's just for anyone who would think that because I profess to be a Christian, and more specifically, I profess that I believe in Jesus Christ, that I believe in Christ as a personal savior, as my personal savior, and I follow Christ. So, people hear that, and I've heard this in the short time that I've become a little more open about just, articulating my faith in really clear and assertive terms. I've had some reactions from people, like friends, who automatically, like instantly assume that I'm this like narrow-minded, like rigid, dogmatic Christian who was raised that way from childhood. And I'm like, hold on, I feel like I just need to give a tiny bit of backstory. I considered myself atheist for a little while, and then I was sort of the secular humanist, and then I was sort of like into like Eastern spirituality, and like I got to this on my own, basically. I shouldn't even say that. It's not that I got to this on my own, but no one was pushing me into this. Like, not anything like it. Almost the opposite, in fact. But again, I won't get into family history stuff, but I'll just say that absolutely no one pushed me into being Christian. Like, I came to it, very slowly and through a lot of searching and reflecting, and it was not easy, by the way. There was a ton of doubt and going back, and stuff, and I still experience that. I mean, the Christians I talk to who are further, maybe a little further on their walk with Christ, they tell me that's yeah, that's part of it. Like, we have prayers for that too, you know? It's like, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief, you know? Like doubting Thomas, you know, as another example. Like, you know, like, we can't really condemn doubting Thomas for needing, you know, to put his hand in the side, you know, like who okay, I don't know about anyone else, but I'll say I don't know if I would be any different in that situation. I mean, that's kind of how it feels a lot of the time. You know, you feel like doubting Thomas, like you need to see um, in order to believe, stuff like that. So, what's the point of all this? Yeah, just that talking about spirituality and we're not. I almost don't like that word spirituality because that's not what it is really for me. It's, you know, talking about Christianity, talking about my faith, really talking about like my relationship with Jesus and also what it means to me to be a Christian and how that relates to my work as a musician. I think that is going to keep coming up. So I guess one could consider this, if you're watching this video, sort of an extended disclaimer about the topic, that will be part of my channel. And I do have a lot of videos on my channel that are hymns and stuff like that. So, you know, I think people who are coming to this channel will probably see that, um, you know, that I'm a Christian, I work as a church musician, and so on. But I do intend to um, talk about my faith, and talk about music, both maybe not equally, but you know, they are going to intersect a lot. And it reminds me of that book that I'll mention again. I don't have it in this room; it's in the other room. A book I've been reading called "Walking on Water" by Madeleine L'Engle, and she's such a genius, and she articulates so many ideas so much better than I could. So I'll have to just quote from that book. But if you're curious about this topic, about um, being a Christian artist, and like what that means, to be a Christian artist and to have those two things like strongly like intermixed or intermingled or inseparable, I think Madeleine L'Engle's book is a great place to start. At least that's where I've started, and I'm going to be seeking out other books on this topic now as well. I'm sure that they are out there. I imagine C.S. Lewis has written about this. I'm a big fan of C.S. Lewis's um, apologetics books, you know, Mere Christianity and all the others in that series. Those are really powerful books to me. I don't know if he talks about being a Christian artist specifically and like his own personal experience as a writer. He must. I think probably in Tolkien's letters Tolkien's and C.S. Lewis's letters, I'm guessing they have some dialogue about that because they disagreed on theology, because I believe Tolkien was Catholic and C.S. Lewis was Anglican. So obviously they would have had significant disagreements about theology. And I imagine they had some interesting discussions about their work as writers, you know, as fantasy authors. And I would so love to read their thoughts on their work as fantasy authors and how that relates to their theology, and even how it relates to their specific theology. Like, is Lord of the Rings not just a Christian book, but a Catholic book? Like, I don't know. Maybe some people would claim that it is. I don't know. I'm sure that's a deep rabbit hole. And then the same thing with like Chronicles of Narnia. Like, C.S. Lewis did make a point, and at least in Mere Christianity, of saying that he was aiming for an ecumenical approach, at least with his apologetics. You know, that he was really trying not to advocate for any particular denomination, but that he was advocating for mere Christianity. So I don't know. Is that present in the Chronicles of Narnia? Like, is it like an ecumenical like Christian fable? Madeleine L'Engle, A Wrinkle in Time. Um, I haven't finished Walking on Water, so I don't know if she addresses A Wrinkle in Time in that book. But like Madeleine L'Engle does state that her time books, you know, A Wrinkle in Time and A Swiftly Tilting Planet and the others in that series, she does state that those are like, they are Christian books because she is a Christian writer and everything that she writes is infused with her with her beliefs. Um, it's been a long time since I read Wrinkle in Time. I read it as like a kid, so I have to go back. I actually have a copy, and I'm going to reread it and see how much of it like works on that level for me. I'm really curious about it. Anyways, um, like I don't know if she talks about how that book like interacts with her faith. Maybe if you read the book, it'll be like really clear. Like maybe if you read the book knowing that Madeline L'Engle was a Christian, and I believe from my reading on her that she was a Universalist. I'm pretty sure she said that explicitly. So she was a Universalist Christian. And so, like, I'm really curious to read A Wrinkle in Time again and see, like, how the world of the book interacts with my understanding of Madeline L'Engle's Christianity. And that's not to say that everything has to be just like a straightforward allegory. Like, I know that famously, like, Tolkien hated that approach to Lord of the Rings. Like, he was adamant that no, Lord of the Rings is not supposed to be some like black and white paint by numbers like allegory for like the First World War or the Second World War or whatever, because a lot of people like to kind of interpret it as such. You can't deny that there are a lot of parallels. Tolkien served in the First World War, and he saw things on the battlefield and in society that, of course, are present in Lord of the Rings. Like, it's like, yeah, some of those things are clear as day, and I don't even think Tolkien would dispute some of those connections. The dead marshes, for example, like the imagery of the dead marshes with the actual battlefields, in France. It's like, you know, yeah, that's there, right? And like, then you can get into murkier stuff. Like, okay, so are the Ents, the trees that are slow and are extreme. The race of trees in Lord of the Rings, the Ents, that are extremely powerful but extremely slow to act and to get involved because it's not their conflict. Who might the British think are the Ents in, I don't know, the First World War and the Second World War, where in both cases the war had already been going on for several years before the great behemoth, the United States, decided to cross the ocean and get involved, right? Like, did Tolkien intend that? I don't know. Could he have intended it? Maybe. Could he have not intended it? Very possibly. It's very possible he just wrote the Ents. He wasn't thinking about the U.S. and he wasn't trying to make some point about the U.S. like coming in. He might have just had that as an idea, and it's like an easy connection for us to make after the fact because, oh well, look, there's all these parallels, right? So I guess the point of this extended rumination is just to emphasize that the connections between one's faith and one's art are not at all like these clear, tight lines that people sometimes want there to be. Now, in some cases it is because the artist does that intentionally, and like, if they're like explicitly recording music as a Christian, like, singer or whatever, like, okay, that's like, that's different, right? But I'm saying there are a lot of cases where artists have very strongly held beliefs that they are not explicitly proclaiming in their work, but yet at the same time those beliefs are present in their work in all kinds of fascinating subterranean, sort of under the surface kind of ways. And it's that second category that does really interest me the most. I would even say that Bach is in that second category to some extent. I mean, kind of contrary to what I said in the previous live stream, that Bach's music is like this powerful, in a way, to me, is a powerful evangelical tool. It's one of the great, arguments for Christianity. At least for me, I mean, it's one of the things that like pushed me into Christianity. I'm not even joking about that at all. Was my sustained encounters with Bach's music. It's like, oh my gosh, and for every piece that is so unbelievably powerful to then be inscribed at the end of the score with SDG, Solo Deo Gloria, you're like, oof, that's pretty powerful evidence for that, Deo, that Bach is, attributing the piece to. All glory to God, Solo Deo Gloria, like Soli Deo Gloria, like he's saying, all glory to God, like this, this came from God, basically, giving it back to God. Like, if you experience Bach's music as like profoundly powerful and moving in a way that nothing else even comes close, as I do, it's pretty hard then to say, yeah, okay, but that God stuff is all nonsense, right? Like, ooh. So that I had that experience. I was like, man, this Bach is like really making me think about this God stuff a little differently. And Bach's music, a lot of it, most of it, was explicitly for use in worship services because he was a church musician. So he was writing cantatas and orators not orators. Orator. St. Matthew Passion. Is that an oratorio? You know what I'm trying to say. He was writing that stuff for worship services, right? So yeah, that's in a case of the explicit linkage, but the implicit linkages with Bach are also there, between his faith and his music. I mean, we can look at examples like the cross motive, right? In music, like there's, the famous cross motive, and it's like, you might not know that that's like religious iconography represented in music if you didn't have like a textbook open in front of you to know that, oh, this piece is using the cross motive, right? But that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's a little bit of a subterranean statement of faith, but it's definitely there, right? And so I don't know if it's putting too fine a point on it to say that that's what I aim to be. I guess I have to think about this. I haven't really thought this through enough to give a clear, definitive answer on how I relate to this topic. In a way, I'm still relatively new to it. As I said, my faith journey has been a fairly long one, and it's still very much under development. So, how my art connects to that is also something I'm still figuring out. I can probably leave it there. That's a good kind of question mark spot to leave it because it is a big open question. So let's just let it be that. Now I'm going to check the live stream for comments as I did last time because, like I said, I have to be more diligent about looking and seeing if people are commenting so that I can actually talk to people. Any chats? Is also something I'm still figuring out. Oh, quiet you. No. Shh. Okay. No comments in the chat. That's good. Well, if there are any comments in the future, I will at the very least try to respond to them as I'm streaming so that we can get that interaction stuff going. And I will figure out how to get those comments like actually embedded into the video in the future because that's a thing that other live streamers do. So I'm sure there's like some technology involved with actually making that work. But I'll figure out a way to do it. And so then I'll actually be like a proper live streamer. All right. That's my thoughts for tonight. Yep, signing off. If you watched all of this, you deserve a prize or a medal or something.